Hello YouTube, Az here, and today I wanted to do a video talking about a lot of short things, just the general state of ARPGs, the new loot patch that's coming out for Path of Exile 2, which I'm really excited about, and basically my first impressions on the endgame. My previous video I talked about how I finally got to the endgame for the first time in Path of Exile 2. I refused to play it on softcore and on trade. I really wanted to push myself to get to hardcore, to the end game in hardcore SSF, and I finally did it. And I'm actually looking forward, because I've done the campaign so many times, I'm actually looking forward to testing out the new loot patch when it comes out on the campaign, when I inevitably end up losing my character, which I still haven't lost, by the way. I did a good 10 to 15 maps before deciding to wait for the patch to release. So I have a little bit of um, a taste of what the end game is like, and I'll share my initial views. I wanted to do a video where I talk about that before experiencing it a lot more in depth and getting to the same level as people who have been harping on and complaining about it for months. While initially I'll say it's not as bad as I was expecting, as I was led to believe, but I also do see where the issues are with juicing, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But before that, I just wanted to explain why I'm excited for the patch. If you watch one of my previous videos when that I recorded when they first announced this patch and what they were planning to change, if you recall, the initial statement on their forums, on GGG's forums, were that they were going to buff the wisps, buff boss drops, and buff a few things in the end game, and I thought that was really underwhelming because it's very clear to anyone who's played enough of the campaign. Maybe in the end game when you juice a lot, you get a lot of currencies and items where you don't really see it that much, but the campaign is seriously lacking in especially currency drops. And the patch notes the intention document, let's say, that they released about 10 days ago, I think it was, before their holiday. It was really underwhelming, and it was actually kind of scary for me. But thankfully, after reading the patch notes today, well, yesterday, my excitement peaked again, and I'm kind of glad that I decided to give myself a couple of days break, just so that I can be hyped and rested to try everything out again. And while I won't be going through the whole patch notes, because every content creator's already done that, and they've explained the changes much better than I ever will, I wanted to point out a couple of things that I think will actually impact the campaign. Now, I may not be qualified to talk about the endgame, but I bet you I'm very qualified to talk about the campaign because I've done it, judging from all of my rip clips that I've been uploading onto this channel since the start of this patch. I mean, we're looking at least 12 to 13 deaths, most of them coming either in Act 3 or between Act 3 and Act 5. So I've done the first 3 acts a lot, like a lot, and if you add in the first season as well, it was the same. I basically know all the map layouts off by heart. I can just find the exit really easily now, which is why I think that I'm qualified to talk about what we're missing in the campaign loot-wise and maybe map-wise. I'll get into a little bit of that as well. But basically, this line right here about how magic currency, quality currency, flask charms, runes are now less likely to drop from monsters with high item rarity. These 3 changes generally result in around 20 to 30% more rare currency. So we'll be getting more exalted orbs, alchemy orbs, and regal orbs, and all of that. A huge relief. A huge relief. The only thing I'm a little worried about, and it's a small worry for SSF people, I know this isn't a problem in trade where you can buy any of the quality currency that you need and any of the runes that you need. The runes, I find, are still not dropping enough, and the quality currency, while the change to the quarry in Act 2, and of course Act 5 as a result of that, while it's sort of helped, especially when you need to find those armor scraps that you're missing and you end up having to use a lot on all of your armor, it's still a little bit lacking. And the runes, I find that if you're playing SSF, it's just not enough, because you have to keep changing your gear so often, or you end up getting a new piece of gear and you need stats, so you try and replace some of your resist with the stat runes, But this means that your previous runes are now gone, or you get a new piece of currency and you're missing your the resist runes you want, and there's no way to really target farm them, which is why I think the rune system, I mean, this is very obvious, but it'll never be as good as the crafting bench. Despite me understanding why the crafting bench makes everything a little too easy in GGG's eyes. I say understanding, I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying I understand, and if they can work around it, then I can understand why they want to leave themselves that much of a design space. Because when you have the crafting bench that can help you craft items extremely deterministically, that kind of limits what they want to do in the future, and I get that. I do get that. But what they have now, it's still not enough. I know in the campaign it doesn't matter that your resists are capped that much, but it's still annoying when you have to juggle different resists and stats, and there's no easy, quick way to change these things around. So I'm not even sure if increasing the amount of rune drops will help that. And I have no other suggestions. Maybe another system alongside runes would help, or just giving us a lot more rune drops. Maybe allowing us to buy rune drops for gold would actually... that would actually be really good now that I think about it. At least the lower tier ones, because at the end of the day, gold is very valuable in this game. It's not like in Diablo where you don't care. And at least in the campaign, I know in the end game people gamble away millions and millions of gold, but in the campaign gold is very scarce. So much so that it's always a decision whether you sell your bears or you disenchant them for regal shards, sorry. So I get that. But overall, this should make things good on the currency department. Now, the other main issue still isn't resolved, and I don't think we'll get a resolution to that until they add more crafting systems, which I do hope they end up doing in the beta test before we have to wait for the full release. I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Spending one item of currency for one affix is annoying, discouraging, and frankly, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of cheapens the feeling you get. While I don't agree with people saying that the system is actually non-existent and doesn't work, it is far too RNG and far too gambling dependent in the campaign. Now that I'm in the end game and I've had the chance to recombinate a few things, drop a few omens. I haven't been able to use the omens yet because they're too valuable for me. But seeing what you can do, I just wish we had that flexibility in the campaign somehow. And if we don't, I still think we need alternative, campaign-only, low-tier currencies. Essences, I wish, worked kind of like in Path of Exile 1. I really hate that the essences only give you one affix. A lot of them are just sitting in my bank. I'm too afraid to use them in case I ever decide to dedicate myself to that magical item, which I never do. And apart from the Orb of Alchemy, there's no currency item that will give me more than one affix with one use, therefore making everything ridiculously expensive and really causing problems when you want to keep changing your gear in the campaign to keep up, especially in hardcore. In softcore, you don't care if you die, you can just brute force it, which is why people probably feel the campaign is a lot more boring than I do. I actually like going through the campaign. It took me around, I think, 16 to 17 hours on my character. I talked about it in that video, and this, apart from doing the same act twice, I don't really see any major issues with the campaign. I think it's a lot of fun, but if you're on softcore and you're just brute forcing and you're dying over and over again and you're just trying to get past and only upgrading when you're really stuck on a big boss or something, I understand that it can be a lot more frustrating. So I'm looking forward to these changes, and like I said, I will end up dying inevitably, and I'm actually excited to start a new character through the campaign and seeing how it's different. I may actually delete my entire stash and start from a fresh character, because I don't think we can migrate everything. I don't think we can migrate the stashes yet. I haven't seen it anyway. I'll take a look at it, and if not, I'll just delete my entire stash and try to go through the campaign after this patch with a fresh character, with a fresh, as if it was a league start, and see how much better it feels. Another thing that I'm really encouraged by are basically... This is kind of weird, I know, because in Path of Exile 1 and Diablo, we're encouraged to never open the chests. And I get that, it was a waste of time. I never bothered in Path of Exile 1. In Path of Exile 2, I actually do. If I see a yellow chest, I'm going to click on it. And every single time, it's very disappointing. So I wasn't expecting this change, where they were going to buff the rare and magic chests a little bit. I'm actually very excited for it, because I like clicking on things and seeing something come out of it. It applies to the monkey part of my brain. It really gets my juices flowing. I love the slot machine aspect, which is also why I don't mind the crafting being very RNG based that much. But like I said, I do understand the impracticalness of it. But I'm okay with some RNG, so getting more dopamine hits will definitely allow me to feel better about the game. And hey, plus, increased rare drops, guaranteed rare drops, it's going to help a lot. It was one of my biggest concerns that we never drop enough rares to be able to disenchant for regal orbs, regal shards, or sell to get enough gold. So this will help as well. So a lot more currency items, a lot more rares. In my video I talked about how we need that across the board, and by God they've addressed it. Now the only thing they need to do is add extra bits of currency. Everything else, great, fine, I'm looking forward to it. Strong boxes feeling better will undoubtedly help. I may actually try buffing the boxes, using my valuable currency on trying to make the boxes. I mean, most of the time I'll just transmute it and augment it, and then I'll just do it to kill more mobs, basically. The only function for strong boxes for me is hoping that they spawn a couple of rares that I can kill to hopefully get a little more loot. I never care about what's coming out of the boxes themselves, because even if you find a yellow, I think it's Researcher Strongbox, the one that drops currencies, whenever you open it, you end up getting like 5 augments, which is kind of disappointing. So I'm looking forward to that. The Trial of Sekima and the Trials of Chaos, sure, I still think Chaos is way, way, way too overtuned for campaign characters. The only way I've been able to reliably get past the Trials of Chaos on a melee character, mind you, on ranged it's fine. On a melee character, the best way I've managed to go is go in as over-leveled as possible. I've done it, the last character I did that I managed to get the endgame, I think I did it at level... I was level 50 when I did my Trials of Chaos to get my second Ascendancy points. That's how scared I was of the Trials of Chaos. And everything else, that's fine. So yeah, overall, the patch looks great, looks exciting, looking forward to it. I want to quickly touch on the endgame, now that I've experienced the endgame a little bit. I want to say that I really do wish we could use the tablets on any map. I don't like the tower system. I understand now very clearly why people don't like the tower systems. As an example, I really wanted to use recombinators a lot, and to be able to do that, I need to drop a lot of expedition currency. Well, what happens when you go into an expedition map and you don't get the currency you want, when it's not Danig or I forget who gives the chalices. I forget who gives the recombinator. I've only ever really managed to get Danig and some of the others, and it's when you can't target farm the league mechanic you want, it's very frustrating. And I think it's the main detraction from Path of Exile 1, and I understand where people are coming from. Now, a lot of the other complaints I don't really get. I think the endgame drops were a lot better than the campaign. Not quite there yet. Not quite there. I was only just barely dropping a few extra exalts, but at least I was getting enough exalts to finish off all the affixes on my gear that I failed to do in the campaign. And that certainly felt amazing and relieving when I got around to that. But apart from that, yeah, the maps are too big. But knowing where all the rare mobs are on the map, I've never played it in the previous version where you didn't know and you had to go through the whole map. I kind of get how that would be annoying. Well, not kind of, I really get how that... The Den of Evil was the worst experience when I played Diablo 2 back in the day. Having to go through and kill every single last mob. That was a tiny map. So I get people being really, really angry with that one. I like that we at least see where all the rares are, but I think that the maps either need to be a lot smaller or... I don't know, when we complete around 75% or 80% of the map, I think we should have the option to continue. I think that'll make the blasters happy. But we really need to be able to use the tablets on regular maps, and the towers, you can either change the function to make it something else, or if you use a tablet on a tower, maybe it'll double all. These are just suggestions off the top of my head. I have no idea what would work. I don't claim to know what the solution is, but juicing maps, I understand wanting to lower the complexity from PoE 1, but it feels lacking. I'm having to just use like easier waystones just to clear the nodes, the maps that I need to get to the maps that I really want to do. And the towers are still a bit far off in the distance, and I haven't been able to get around to that yet and get to calculating how to most optimally use my tablets. So I understand. I hope they address that in the next big patch or next or 0.3. I hope they get around to that, because it's like I said, the end game is not as bad as people say it is, but it's still lacking. But I feel like they can make it work. It's not the worst thing. It's really not. As an example, Last Epoch's endgame, even with the new patch, it wasn't for me. Last Epoch is a great game with very, very bold ideas. I guess we're moving on to the next. That was my endgame first impressions. I didn't play enough of it to talk too much. Those were just whatever I had to say. Last Epoch, I played it for around 12 to 13 hours. When it first came out in 1.0, I played it a lot more. I did all of the maps and all the corruptions and whatnot. And I didn't feel that it was any better this time. And despite the fact that it's a really good game, I like how creative they are with all of the in-map events. I like that they're brave. I respect that they shower you with events. Loot gets really old really quickly. It was actually annoying having to look for a loot filter very early in the campaign, just because it was really frustrating going through every single one. Or despite it not being efficient, it's the completionist in me where I want to pick up everything that I can see that I can possibly break later on. I want to be able to pick it up and dump it somewhere or break it when I have the chance. The item crafting in Last Epoch is a great idea and one that I enjoy in moderation. But as weird as it sounds, I kind of prefer Path of Exile. Path of Exile 1 has a much better crafting system, without a doubt. Path of Exile 2, right now, I kind of prefer it. But keeping in mind the potential for it to develop. So not in its current state, maybe. But I can see how it'll easily surpass Last Epoch's crafting system. For me, I know people love it. The first time I encountered it, I had a lot of fun with it, until it basically got a little tiring for me. I like Path of Exile 1's system of just being able to come up with a path. Let's say it's a journey. Going through, you're editing your item. You are editing your item. Item crafting means you're editing your item. And the journey to edit your item in Path of Exile 1 is a lot more enjoyable. A lot more complicated, mind you, but it's one of those things that Path of Exile does really well, where if you give yourself enough time if you invest enough time in understanding the mechanics, you're rewarded greatly. Which is also why I understand why people don't like Path of Exile 2's current crafting system, because it's just slam. There's an emote on one of the Twitch extensions you can use where it's just a gorilla smashing Chaos Orbs and Divine Orbs onto items, and it really does feel like I'm a big gorilla just smashing items and praying. But at the same time, like I said, I can see the potential. I can see the amount of space they're leaving so that they can add more and more things. So, and even in this form, sometimes, in some cases, I kind of prefer it. If you're crafting with omens and recombinators, I prefer it to Last Epoch system. The campaign crafting, hell no. It's really annoying and boring as hell. But, you know, with the omens and some of the other stuff, maybe with the socketables, I don't know. I think there's more potential there. It's more fun for me. In fact, I also played No Rest for the Wicked yesterday. And despite really liking it on launch, it didn't grip me as much for some reason. And I think it's because the combat has regressed in that game. I liked the combat a lot more last year when it first came out and the first time I played it. When I played it yesterday, the monsters were dodging way too much. I was running out of stamina way too much, so I ended up speccing a lot into stamina to try and make it better. But the animations feel a lot... It felt like playing, because I like big weapons as well, it felt like I was playing Mace Warrior in Path of Exile 2, but worse. Like, I want you to understand how dire that is. And I know people will... These are my perceptions and my... I'm not saying this is the objective truth. I'm sure there are people who love the combat and no rest for the wicked. I'm sure people love the crafting systems and the combat and Last Epoch. Again, Last Epoch's combat was also very, very lacking for me. It's like when I hit an enemy, it just... I wasn't getting any feedback. It didn't feel good. Even when I was deleting entire screens with my hammers, it just wasn't feeling good. And on the flip side, with No Rest for the Wicked, swinging my big ass claymore or my big hammer or club, it didn't feel good. It felt like I was playing a really bad Path of Exile 2 Warrior Maze build. So in a way, it's kind of made me appreciate Path of Exile 2 a lot more. And I know people are going to hate me for this, and I know that there are a lot of people who disagree with me. It's just my personal preference. I really like the way Path of Exile 2 handles combat. It's really good, so much so that it kind of killed other ARPGs for me. When I first played Dark Souls, it killed a lot of the more action-oriented ARPGs for me, and when I played Path of Exile 2, it killed a lot of the hack-and-slash ARPGs for me. And despite there being a lot of problems with it, I find myself wanting to play Path of Exile 2 more and more. I ended up deleting No Rest for the Wicked. I guess I'll come back and try it when it fully releases. Again, it's a great game. Last Epoch 2, they're great games, but I just like PoE 2 more. It's like that meme with Jeremy Clarkson. I mean, I like them, but I really like Path of Exile 2 more. And it hurts me to see the way the community treats GGG, particularly Jonathan. The stuff I read about him, it's ridiculous. People like to pretend that he's just saying, this is the way I play it, so this is the way everyone else has to play it. I see it come up on the GGG forums a lot. He never said that. He just said that he's aware of how the game is from his perspective, and he has a vision, and they're trying to build a game around the vision, and they will expand it slowly over time to meet other people's expectations as well. And for the record, I'm glad they're doing a different game. I'm very sure that with Path of Exile 1, they'll eventually update it as well to what people want to see from a newer Path of Exile 1. I mean, he pretty much said it, right? He said when they're done importing all of the cosmetics from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2, when they're done with all of that, they're going to import the rigging from Path of Exile 2 into Path of Exile 1 so that they can do WASD. Now, to me, that just seems like they can also import a lot of the animations and whatnot, so it just makes sense that over time they'll also update Path of Exile 1 to be as smooth as Path of Exile 2. So, I mean, don't count them out. And all these conspiracies I read about how they're not making decisions anymore. People keep quoting that one 4chan leak from months ago as if it's like the Dead Sea Scrolls, as if it's the first iteration of the Bible. I just don't buy it. If GGG never did anything, if they didn't change everything and overhaul things several times since December, I would understand the rage. The first time I played Path of Exile 2 in December, on the first few days of 0.1, you'll remember that they had to quickly patch in and give us more loot because there was no loot. It was really frustrating. I was on stream and I was actually talking about how it felt really bad to play the game and that I wouldn't play it until they buffed the loots. And thankfully, if you remember, like a couple of days in, I think it was even on the weekend, they immediately buffed it and it felt so much better. And since then, whatever people have complained about, they've changed things around. So I don't get a lot of the hate. I understand that people don't like it when their builds are nerfed, and people don't like that this is a beta test and that shouldn't be an excuse, but it is a beta test. Like, it's literally a beta test. This is what beta tests are for. I'm 41 years old. I've been attending beta tests since Diablo 1. Back then, betas, you'd get it off a CD from some gaming magazines back then. And I remember playing the beta for Diablo 1 way back. I think it was in 94 or 95. Must have been 95. Where even Griswold's voice was just a placeholder and was just this big, boomy, scary thing. And the game was just really rough. And despite that, it ended up being good. And that was how many ever years ago. I joined the Ultima Online beta test. I've done countless MMORPG beta tests over the years, and this is one of the best beta tests I've ever been a part of. So I'm guessing a lot of people are kind of new, or they just expect everything to be finished and polished immediately. Just give it time. They'll get around to it. Like I said, I had a few doubts about this patch 10 days ago. Now I'm looking at the patch notes and I'm actually kind of impressed. Now, whether or not the patch notes translate into an actual good experience, we have yet to see. But at least I'm confident that if it isn't, and we mention and we explain why it isn't, that they'll change it again. They've never not changed things around. And one more thing about the endgame, and how people say, oh, this endgame is terrible and whatnot. I distinctly remember they overhauled the entire endgame for Path of Exile 1 several times, and they continued building up on it. And when people say, oh, they should have, used whatever they learned from Path of Exile 1 and made Path of Exile 2 perfect out of the gate. If it wasn't a different game, I'd understand. If this was indeed Path of Exile 1.5, as a lot of people hoped it would be, as they announced it would be in 2019, I would understand it. But it's an entirely new game, and they have to kind of balance things around. And you look at my previous videos, I've done nothing but criticize a lot of their decisions. But the only reason I'm criticizing them is because they seem to listen. Now, I'm not claiming any of them have seen any of the videos I posted. I doubt it. I mean, very few people have seen it. But, it's still good to get into a discussion, see what people feel. And for anyone who's on the fence about Path of Exile 2, who've maybe bought it, played it a few times, but were discouraged from the online recourse, just give it a try. Honestly, it's not as bad as people are saying it is. It really isn't. I'm often lost for words when I read some of the stuff, especially the subreddit. I don't understand the hate. I really don't. But yeah, I've been rambling for a bit, but at the end of the day, this is a pre-patch yap session, as someone in the comments called it the other day, and I do like yapping. So, hope to see you all in the next video when I've actually had a chance to try the patch, and actually, hopefully, progress a little further in the endgame without dying, maybe get a couple of bosses under my belt, and when I inevitably do die, my thoughts on what the campaign is like after this patch. But to sum everything up, I think they're heading in the right direction. Every patch has made the game feel better, despite some of the nerf patches. I think the game is heading in the right direction, and I'm really looking forward to see how everything pans out. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.